Prime Minister, 100 million a year on extra NHS spending, is that really what a party of the NHS would do? You'd do a lot more than that, wouldn't you?
Well, what we've done across this Parliament is £12.7 billion extra for the NHS, which has meant 1 million more people being treated. It's meant a cancer drugs fund that has got people the drugs and treatments that they need. We've almost abolished completely mixed-sex wards. The number of hospital-acquired infections is radically down. But this is a specific promise which is already in action. 7 million people in our country already have access to 7 day a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening, GP surgeries, and I want that for everybody.
Now, you know in this election you are going to get hammered on the NHS by the opposition. They're going to say you're not the party of the NHS, you're the party of NHS privatisation.
Well, that is nonsense. I think what we'll be able to say is, look, there have been two parties running the NHS in England and Wales these last 5 years. In England, the Conservative Lib Dem coalition has increased investment in our NHS, treated more patients, performed well. In Wales, where Labour have been in charge, they've cut the spending on the NHS and seen a really dismal performance in the Welsh NHS. So people don't have to look in the crystal ball, they can look at the facts on the ground.
Nonetheless, the amount of private contracting has gone up to 6 or 7%. Do you see that? Do you see that going much higher under a Conservative government? Is there anything wrong with privatising the NHS?
Well, these decisions should be made by the people running the NHS, who under our system are now the doctors. The GPs control the majority of the budgets in the NHS. There's a role for the independent sector, but it'll be decisions made by doctors, not by politicians in Whitehall, which is what happened under the last Labour government, where they parachuted in private sector provision. So we shouldn't take any lectures from them.
So step back a moment in this debate over the NHS. Is there not a danger of a generalised political failure where politicians such as yourself tell the public they can have everything in the NHS, they can have these super expensive new treatments and drugs and everything, and they don't, but taxes won't need to go up to pay for it, not dealing with the fundamental problems of an ageing society in this health service?
We need more preventative health care, and that's why actually a 7-day opening for GPs is so important, because in the end, that's the front door into the NHS. That's where the frail elderly should be getting treatment. That's where people should be getting more advice about how to avoid diabetes, how to avoid many of the health conditions that land us with enormous costs down the line. But look, to govern is to choose, as the expression goes. We made a choice in the last Parliament that, yes, we would make spending reductions in some departments, but we protected the NHS. That was the decision that we took, and it was the right call.
But you cut social care, and that's just popped up in NHS waiting lists now.
Well, no, what we've done is now introduce the Better Care Fund, which is billions of pounds of the health budget that's actually used with local authorities to try and make sure that we look after better our frail elderly people who sometimes, you're right, can get stuck in hospital beds when what they really need is being looked after either in their own home or in the community.
So, looking around this conference hall, what does it feel like for you at this vital conference ahead of an election when we know that there are people with delegate passes who know where the next UKIP defection is going to come from?
Well, what I've found at this conference is actually a very real sense of purpose. People really feeling we have delivered a great deal in terms of 1.8 million more people in work, the deficit coming down, welfare being reformed, but there's a very clear plan for the future and a very clear choice. You either end up with a Conservative government led by me, continuing with this plan, or you get Ed Miliband and Ed Balls in the Treasury wrecking the British economy all over again, and no referendum on Europe, no action on immigration, none of the things that these potential voters care about. So I think the sense of purpose at this conference is very strong.
So for any chance of winning a majority, you have to be appealing to at least some Labour voters. I think 5 or 6% would admit, from their perspective, that still George Osborne, yourself, may be running the economy better. What's your pitch to them? What's your pitch to a Labour voter, someone that voted for Gordon Brown?
But my pitch is the same to everybody, which is that we're turning our long-term economic plan into a plan for you, to help you buy the home of your dreams, to help you get a decent job, to earn and keep more of your own money, to get a good school place for your child, to have dignity in retirement. It is a very straightforward, down-to-earth programme based not on rhetoric, but based on a record in government of delivering for people. Now, I think there are lots of people who simply haven't made up their mind about the next election, and they're asking themselves some questions. who is going to look after this economy and give me the security and the stability that I need? And it's to those people that I think we have a very, very clear appeal.
One way to energise politics, we've seen from Scotland, 16 and 17-year-olds. Why are you scared of giving 16 and 17-year-olds the vote?
I'm certainly not scared of it. I just think that 18 is the right age for majority and the right age to vote. And voting is an enormous privilege and a right, but it's a right you should get at 18. I think the reason the Scottish referendum took fire wasn't because of votes for 16-year-olds. It was because it was such a massive question about the future of our country. And I think the next election will be a massive question about the future of our country, forward with the Conservatives or back to square one with Labour. That's a pretty big question.
But there's another narrative on the election that it's going to be very depressing, personalised attacks on you and your background and your school and your tennis partners versus your people and your henchmen going for Ed Miliband and what he looks like and his weakness, alleged weakness.
Well, I think what you've heard, what you've heard from us this week is very concrete record in terms of the economy and welfare and education, things that we have done, commitments made, commitments delivered, and then a new set of commitments for the next Parliament where we turn this economic plan into something that is really relevant to people's lives about the money they earn, the job they have, the home they can afford, the retirement they can secure. That is, in the end, that's what people vote, I think, because of what you're offering that is positive about the future of your country. But it's perfectly legitimate to say, are the Labour team capable of running a modern economy when they can't even remember that the deficit is a massive problem facing our country? I don't think they are ready for it, and I think it's a perfectly legitimate point to make.